And I thought, that's it. That's the one that's going to touch my heart. And I started to train for it. It's mammoth. It's a wild, vast wilderness out there. If we could all sit down and look at all the potential 100-mile swims on the planet, all of which are in equatorial waters for the warmth, you can't find a more difficult stretch than this, from the sharks to the deadly jellyfish to the currents. The Gulf Stream comes catapulting out of the Yucatan Channel. It's flowing hard to the east, and you're trying to make it to the north. And as much as you go east, the angle of trying to make it over to Florida becomes untenable after a while. Pretty soon you're swimming 150 miles, 200 miles to make it to land. And I tried it. Went 41 hours and 49 minutes and was in eddies and storms and unpredictable weather that comes there all the way from Africa and up from the Galapagos. It's just a nightmare, and I didn't make it. The next year I swam from the Bahamas to Florida, and it wasn't as satisfying, but it was the end. I was starting to get offers from the wide world of sports, and you guys might be too young for it, but when I was a kid, to say the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. It was too much, and I guess in my mind I was thinking, I'm 30, it's time to live a responsible life and make a living. And so for those next 30 years, as I was working and, living, it's not that it was a burning hole. It's not that I would go to sleep at night unable to cope with not achieving that dream, and I would watch other people try it. People have been trying since 1950, and I would watch, and when they wouldn't make it, I admit, I had a little happy dance. But I wasn't going back to swimming. It just seemed that was at a different time, and the discipline was so rigorous. It's a very difficult sport. And I met, during those years, Christopher Reeve, the bravest soul I've ever known. And, Chris was injured. Yeah, please, Christopher Reeve. And Chris was injured doing one of the sports he loved. He loved athletes and sports, and we would often meet, at events like this where we'd both be backstage as speakers, and we would talk sports. He had to get there so early because he lived in that quadriplegic contraption that he hated so much. And we would talk sports and talk mainly what I was talking about before with that cigarette boat driver. So Chris would tell me that he remembered he loved sailing. And he'd be out on that boat in a competition, and his job is pulling certain lanyards or whatever, that he would feel that he had super X-ray vision or something. He was so awake that he could see the foam on the surface, and he was, it was like a high, a natural high. And he said to me he wished, like that boat driver told me, that he could have taken that all to the rest of his life. And now that he doesn't have his body, it was one regret that he had. And so one day he said, we keep talking about athletes, and you haven't told me about you. What's your story? So I told him the fingernail story, and he loved that story. He said he was going to go home right that day and tell his son was little then, Will. And then he says to me, well, it's been a lot of years since you were an athlete. You said you were going to live the whole rest of your life that way. In sports, it's easier, right? You're in a black and white world. It's easy to define your goal. It's easy to know exactly what you need to do to get there. And it's easy to measure whether you got there or not. Whereas the rest of us, life is more grays. Who's going to tell you you're the best father in the world? It's up to you to go to sleep at night and know just what a father you are. So he says to me, so you can see what I'm asking. The question is, are you living your life that way now? So you can't do any day a fingernail better. And I said, can I have some time to think about that? I want to get back to you on that. And then Chris died, and I never did talk to him again. Then my mom died, and then I turned 60. And I'll tell you something, It was a moment of existential anxiety. 60, my mom just died at 82, and I'm thinking, is it possible that I only have 22 years left to live? What am I doing? You know the Mary Oliver quote? It's my favorite question. You know, you just pick up the mirror one day and you ask yourself her question. What are you doing? What is it you're doing with this one wild and precious life of yours? And when I asked myself that question, it wasn't about, you know, is your name in enough record books? Are you making bunches of money? Are people patting you on the back for how great you are? It was what we started this conversation today with is, who are you? What's your character? Are you proud of yourself? Are you walking around with those shoulders high like a champion? And I had to answer the question that I was not living with some unrelenting, unwavering passion, and I wanted to feel that. I was driving my car one day that summer, it's 2009, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I know what I'm going to do. Will the shoulders be there? Will the will be there? I don't know. But I'm going to go chase that Cuba dream that was always in my heart. And I started back training, and I remembered immediately how long those hours are. You know, I did countless. And of course, it became a 4-year dream. I thought it was going to happen in 2010, in the summer. But, you know, all those variables we started to talk about, it's so hard to get them all together in 1 2 to 3 day period for you to make it across that channel. And I started training again 8-hour swims, and then 12-hour swims, and then 20-hour swims, swims that most marathon swimmers don't even do in their lifetime for their career. And I have a lot of respect for anybody who swims the English Channel. But this is extreme. It's at a whole different extreme level. You can imagine what the body goes through, just, you know, that duress of persistence. You're in salt water, you don't feel well, it's hard to take in the nourishment that you need to take in. The mind, you know, is sort of boggled with the sensory deprivation. I never compare myself to other sports and athletes because I'm so in awe of the Mount Everest climbers and the Tour de France riders, you know, all of the endurance sports. But the one difference here is that you've got tight caps over your ears and fogged goggles over your eyes, so you're not looking and you're not hearing. You're just with your own thoughts all those hours and lonely hours, and it takes tremendous inner strength to keep it together and keep it going. I have a whole bunch of counting techniques in different languages, but also have a playlist of maybe 85 songs. And it's so kind of comforting to be in them and know that your particular rhythm and cadence of your stroke is exactly 4/4 time like the songs that I like. And I can count, for instance, if I sing to myself, now no headphones, I'm just singing to myself in the water. If I sing Janis Joplin's version of Bobby McGee, exactly, and I hear her voice, I hear the guitar, I hear everything about that version of Bobby McGee. If I sing that 1,000 times in a row, and so, you know, I'm out there, it's nighttime, I'm just cruising along, I don't see the boat well, I don't see anything, I'm just out in the middle of the wild blue ocean, and I'm singing, Buzzard flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train, feeling about as faded as my jeans roll. And right to the end, la 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 la, la 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 la, hey, 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 Bobby McGee. Busted flat. And when I get to 1,000 Bobby McGee's, I've got 9 hours and 45 minutes to the second. Not a minute before and not a minute after. So that's what I'm doing out there. You know, not to mention you know, after a while, the concrete mind that's counting and keeping it together and singing and knowing every 90 minutes you're going close to the boat to get your nutrition, to talk to your people. There's also, you know, the mind, woo! I like to read astrophysics for the layperson, and before this last Cuba, the final swim, I was reading Stephen Hawking the night before. And as most astrophysicists believe today, he writes in his book, you know, at the moment before the Big Bang, all of the matter and the energy of this universe was literally in the size of a millionth of a penny, literally. And then the nuclear fusion, the bang that happened, spat it all out into what we see today, and we, our lucky little Earth, wound up at a certain distance from the sun, and that's how life happened. And I'm reading that, just blows my mind the night before the swim. But imagine being out there under 1 billion stars, and you start looking around saying, whoa. And you know what? They say those stars aren't even really there anymore. We're just seeing the light from those stars that used to be there billions of years ago. That's how long the lights take to get here. And pretty soon you're just in an astronomical frenzy out there in your mind. The jellyfish that used to be there, the Portuguese men of war, they're not pleasant. If you've been stung by them, you scream out, you yell a couple of good obscenities. But the box jellyfish that have arrived there now because of global warming and oil spills, etc., it's the most deadly animal in all of our oceans. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And when I was first stung by them, I thought I was a hot, burning paraffin fire. I was screaming out, "Bonnie, help me! I'm on fire! I'm on fire! I'm paralyzed! I can't move! My hands are going like this!" And I swam for 24 more hours after that sting. Oh. Yeah, but I was debilitated. Oh.